more.
Right. Yeah. So the idea that, these guys that are technically speaking older and a little bit more mature when they're young, right? When they're 9 or 10 and they first start playing, they're getting picked for these teams, right? They play on their regional team, and then all of a sudden they get picked for an all-star team. If you guys have ever played Little League Baseball, stuff like that, the bigger kids get picked for that program, and so they get some extra practice and they get some extra competition stuff and so on and so forth. And just kind of showing that idea of how these guys, just based upon their age, something completely out of everyone's control, kind of got a little bit of a nudge or an advantage. Anyone know what the cutoff point for boys volleyball is? Anyone know?
Is it August?
August 31st or August?
Nope. September 1st.
Oh.
September 1st is the cutoff date. How many of you got anyone here born in September, October, or November? Raise your hand.
Me, I was born in September.
If you can, turn on your videos, because that makes life easier for us on the call. Yeah, a couple people.
I just realized I had a horrible birthday for volleyball. I'm born in July.
Yeah. Very good. The interesting thing, and I've kind of looked at the beta base side of this as well. It's not as skewed, which is interesting for volleyball. And they kind of talk about why in this book, about why, why hockey, why soccer, why I forget the baseball, I think was the other sport they used, why it really gets this skewed just based on birthdays. Anyone remember why it gets so skewed in those sports, specifically for their birthdays? Coach John, yeah?
I don't even know if it's right, but was it because of like facilities and being able to have adequate facilities for those particular sports? Like they said, basketball doesn't really matter your age because you can find a basketball court anywhere. For ice hockey, you have to get put into these groups or these leagues, and they have limited facilities. That is
actually for a later chapter.
Okay.
But the idea that they specifically talk about, and I think that fits well in the sense for volleyball, is most of those sports, you're starting when you're like 8 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're starting really young. And when you're that young, for you, as you guys all know, like size and a little bit of maturity goes a long way. And they say at about 10, that's when kind of everything kind of evens off in terms of maturity for boys and different stuff like that. I forget the country that they specifically know. I think it's like Sweden or something. They don't break anything up by age until after 10 to make sure it's kind of gets to that point. How many of you guys started playing volleyball before you were 10? Okay. 1 or 2 of you? 3? All right. Nice. How many of you guys started playing club volleyball before you were 10? Okay. Yeah, that's right, Halo. You did. You're right. I remember that. Yeah. So it doesn't happen often, right? It doesn't happen often for volleyball. Most guys are starting to pick it up probably around 12 to 14 range. That's kind of the time. And so the differences aren't as big per se for volleyball. There's still some. I'm sure if I had access to USA high performance data of those guys, there would probably be something along those lines. But it's an interesting topic, right? To kind of think of like the invisible hand that's at work behind all of the stuff that you guys are, that we're doing. That you have no control of, but that puts you into certain circumstances that give you kind of an added edge. There was a word that I think is important to discuss, that they first talk about Canadian hockey or sports in general as a meritocracy. Does anyone want to define a meritocracy for us? Robin?
Isn't like the people who are the best at something are those with power?
Yeah, it's kind of the people, whatever task you're performing, those who do it the best will rise to the cream will rise to the top idea, right? And they talk about sports being a true meritocracy of, the people who are able to perform at the highest level will rise to the top. That being said, still, Canadian hockey as the example of guys going from when they're 8 years old all the way up to when I think it was U19, like 19 and under team playing. both teams that are playing against each other, 80% of the guys on both teams were born in January, February, or March, right? And so even when we have this idea of a meritocracy, you know, the differences start to really compound when, you know, you're a young kid and you're a little bit bigger in size, and so you get picked for the team, and then all of a sudden you get picked for that team, so now you've got an extra season that you're now playing in, and you've got 20 extra practices and 20 extra matches that other guys weren't getting. So now that little advantage that you started with gets a little bit bigger, and then it keeps compounding and compounding and compounding. And so there's this little aspects as well that kind of are at work behind. So that's not to discourage all of you. You know, it's not to discourage Zach with the July birthday and thinking you're never going to play volleyball. You're never going to be good at volleyball. I think what I love from that chapter is just understanding. You know, understanding the different things that are at work. Anyone know what the cutoff for beach volleyball is?
I don't.
Coach John, do you know the cutoff for beach volleyball?
I don't, but there's like 12s, 14s, 16s or something like that. So I don't, I don't know the exact.
So for like CBVA,
yeah,
there is no real cutoff. It's just like if you are that age, you get to play that. And they group you between two age groups, right? And so it's as well its own version that kind of allows a lot of freedom. And beach volleyball, we'll have an example later on in this book as well of kind of ways that guys can improve and get better and become an outlier per se. But, you know, knowing the things that are out there and how we work with them and how we deal with them is, I think, a good part, a good thing to know. Anything else from chapter 1 that stuck out for any of the guys that were that read the first two chapters? I want to make sure I allow anyone that has a thought to pop in. No? Okay.
Actually, just one quick term in there, Coach Matt. I think you were talking about kind of how things compound, and just for memory, I think the term cumulative advantage is what's being built. So you get those little head starts, but I like that terminology of accumulative advantage of doing this kind of early or being selected for a particular program or team or league. They said like someone on one of the more advanced teams were playing 50 to 70 games versus kind of the rec league guy playing 20. So if you're playing 3 times as much, you're probably going to get better. And then their practice was 2 to 3 times more than, you know, the people that were identified kind of lower. So all those little things that compound, going to skills practice, going to beach, going to whatever, high performance tryout, all those things are going to build and help you establish yourself as getting closer to being an outlier.
Yeah. This wasn't in the first chapter, but who knows the idea of compounding interest in general? What is compounding interest? Seabasket. I'm not trying to make this into a personal finance book club or anything like that, but Robin, go ahead if you want to.
Like the more money you have, the more interest like you get, right?
It's exponential, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's the idea of Robin. Yes, idea is correct. Ben correct as well. It's the idea of, say you have $100 and you put it into your bank account, and your bank account has a 1% interest rate, right? So after each month, you get 1% back of your money. So say it's $1, right? The next month, it's not like you just have you're not going to get $1 a month every year, right? Next month, it's going to be 1% of 101, right? So on. So maybe I'm not going to skew the math, but say it's $1.50 the month after that, then it keeps on growing exponentially as you go, right? So every little piece that you're putting into it, it's not just, you know, one deposit that you're making. That next deposit is building upon the other ones, and then each deposit starts to pay for itself even more, and you get greater and greater returns the more effort and more money per se that you put in, right? To think about it in terms of athletics, or think about it in terms of what you guys are doing throughout any choice that you make in life, right? And that's one of the good things that this kind of book goes through, is it's not just sports, it's not just those different ideas, it's a lot of different things that the idea of compounding interest or the idea of putting in time and effort can bring you back to. So I think chapter 2 is kind of where I want to spend most of our time because there was a lot of good examples there. Anyone remember the chapter title for chapter 2? What was the title of chapter 2? Anybody?
The 10,000.
Go ahead, Abraham.
The 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah, nice work. Very good enunciation too there. 10,000 hour rule. That's right. And so that's kind of like the big idea from this book that a lot of people will talk about. That's kind of a buzzword, right? The idea of the 10,000 hour rule. What is it? What is the 10,000 hour rule, or the idea of 10,000 hours that they're specifically talking about here?
That it takes 10,000 hours to like master, get good at something.
Okay, it takes 10,000 hours to master a certain skill or certain anything, right? Anything that you're going over. What were some of the prime examples that they bring up in this chapter as outliers, guys that reach the 10,000 hours?
There was Bill Joy programming.
Yeah, Bill Joy programming. Where did he cut his teeth programming wise?
It was at Michigan, right?
Yeah, University of Michigan. Can you, Seabass, dive into that a little bit? What was so special about University of Michigan, specifically for Bill Joy, and how he became a master programmer, computer programmer?
They were unique in that they had basically just opened a new computer center that was open 24 hours, and it enabled him to basically just put in 8 hours a day of straight up programming and working with the computers.
Yeah, right. So got a ton of practice where no one else could have that practice, right? Only Michigan and I think 2 of the Ivy Leagues, and then like Berkeley had access to a computer system like that. And so that was another thing, right? You put Bill Joy in the middle of Texas at the same time, he is not who he is today, right? And so those are the circumstances that are out there about, what it's like for a boys volleyball player growing up in New Orleans. It's a lot different than a boys volleyball player growing up in the Silicon Valley right now, kind of the access that they have to training and to practice. Question, Josh, or talking to someone else? Oh, you're muting
My
yourself.
brother was
Okay.
coming.
Okay, you were talking to someone else. No worries. Okay, that was a good one. A good example of computer programming for sure. What else? What other guys were in there? Anyone remember the band that was in this example of 10,000 hours?
Beatles.
Yeah, the Beatles. How many know? Raise your hand if you know the Beatles. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, everyone can know the Beatles. Good. All right. Glad we're on the same page there. Right. So the Beatles. How did they? They came on the scene. They came to the United States, and they were kind of this. They came out of nowhere. It seemed like, and they took the American music scene by storm. It was the British invasion, right? Is kind of what they called it. But there was so much going on for them leading up to that, and I think they started playing together 7 years prior. What was the example that they had that allowed them to really take a step forward and really become masters of music? Calvin, you can hit on it if you remember the story.
I don't really remember, but I think they were like invited to play in Germany, and yeah, I don't really remember.
Yeah. Yep, you were right. They were invited to play in strip clubs in Germany. And the strange thing about the strip clubs in Germany at the time is what they were doing is they basically would have a band come in to try and draw people into the strip club. But the band would play for 8 hours straight, nonstop, just continuous music, back to back to back to back. And if you've ever been to a concert or you've seen a live music performance, most of the time it's like, an hour and then a break, maybe they'll come back on and do another hour or so, whatever it may be. These guys were playing 8 hours straight into the wee hours of the morning, over and over and over again. I think they had said they'd played over 1,200 shows within the 3 years that they were going back and forth to play in Germany. Most bands don't reach 1,000 shows in their lifetime, even if they have, an incredible 20+ year career, right? And so as this young band getting together, they were just racking up reps, basically, in a not low pressure environment, but an environment that allowed them to practice a lot of different things, and it forced them to become better performers. It forced them to have a lot more stamina to get creative, to learn how to work a crowd, and there were some secondary benefits that they really liked going there, that kept them motivated. But their art really grew through those opportunities. I thought that was a cool one also. What other ones? There's some other good examples in here. I want to make sure we hit all of them. Some very wealthy people in these examples as well. Trying to jog anyone's memory for someone they could chat about here.
Wasn't Bill Gates in this chapter?
Yep. Yeah. Bill Gates was in this one. What was Bill Gates' outlier moment? What was it for him?
He was able to use the computer room at University of Washington, right?
Yeah, that was one of it for sure. Anyone remember how even before he got access to the University of Washington's computer room, what did he have access to before that?
I think at his high school, it was Lakeside High School, right? They had a computer room of their own, and then he and his friend Paul Allen just stayed there every day.
Yep, they stayed there and were programming. Anyone remember the difference between the computer that they had at Lakeside High School, and then same thing as well at University of Michigan? What was the difference in the computer? Basically, the next version of the computer that they had at University of Michigan and Lakeside High School versus the computer that was happening, a year beforehand. Anyone remember the difference? That was a bad descriptor right there. Think of it like, what was the difference between iPhone 7 and iPhone 8, except it was Computer 7 and Computer 8. What made Computer 8 so fantastic for Lakeside High School and University of Michigan?
It had time sharing.
Yeah, what's time sharing?
Like originally, you had to make appointments for your programs to get processed because the computer only had enough power to basically go through one at a time. But then they figured out a way that you could get multiple people's requests processed at the same time, where you could get you could get your software immediately processed while you worked.
Right. Yeah. That's huge, right? Thinking about it in terms of if you think about it in terms of playing volleyball, if you had to, there's no worse thing than going to an open gym and there's 90 people on one court, and going through hitting lines, you have to wait 7 minutes to take one swing, right? That was essentially what was happening on their computer. Was they had to wait, an hour to get a swing. They had to put their code in and see if it worked. And if they had one little mistake in their code, which was literally punching holes in a piece of cardboard, if there was one mistake, you had to start it all over again, right? Going up and you try and take a swing, and all of a sudden you make a mistake. You gave the setter a bad toss, and the setter sets you beyond the antenna. Well, now you got to wait another hour to take another swing, right? You would stop. You would not want to play volleyball very often, right? And so these guys were born at a time when they had finally figured out a way to get rid of that blockage so that anyone could hop on. You can have 100 people typing in code and immediately get feedback if it worked or not, right? And running your program and so on and so forth. So they were able to constantly be coding. And that was a big thing for Bill Gates. His high school, which is a very wealthy high school, had a computer room with this top of the line computer that allowed them to actually get in there and code. But that costs money. Coding cost money back then. Being on the computer cost money. So when they ran out of money, and the mom's club of the school actually ended up adding more money on for them. They ran through that as well. what happened? And Zach, you kind of hit on it. What did they do after they ran out of money for their school's computer? Where did they go to next? How did they work around that?
I don't actually remember that part of the story.
Say what you said first. Where did Bill Gates go?
Oh, they went to University of Washington.
Yeah, they went to University of Washington, exactly, because they got UW actually got access and had one of these computers as well. They started becoming a little bit more prevalent, especially on college campuses, right? So they found access, right? And they found ways to get in, and even when they ran out of money or they ran out of opportunity, ran out of what was working for them before, they found a way around that. How would you guys work that into your mindset of volleyball, right? What's the example for volleyball that you could have currently? What access do you have? What's the roadblock for you? Obviously, coronavirus is a roadblock. We all know that, right? We can't get in practice as a team right now. But what's a way to work around that roadblock currently?
Having like a portable net and being able to set up practice at like a park or in your backyard, or not having someone to pass with or set you balls for hitting lines, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's one way around it. Ben, I've seen in your videos multiple times. What's your workaround? How do you work around that?
Yeah, there's a local school next to our house in the neighborhood. They just have a net, so we use it, take advantage of it.
Yeah. Ben's got a net on a black top, and he posts videos of him and his dad going out and just serving at each other, playing short court, working on swings, different things like that. What else? How else can you do it? Say you don't have access to a net. No problem. What do you do? Liam, love to hear from you on this. What do you do? What advantage do you have to work around the fact that you don't have a net? I don't think you have a net.
I have a net. I have a net.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
You got it. Let's say you don't have a net. What advantage do you have?
Well, I still have a sister, and so I can pepper with my sister.
Yeah, you've got a sibling. You've got a sister who plays, right? Maybe you've got a mom or a dad who plays, right? Different ways to work around your roadblock is the way that you kind of move forward. And you see that with these examples in the book. It's interesting, right? Part of it is just the fact of, it could be your birthday that gives you the little added push, right, in the right direction. It could be where you were born and the access that you have to a certain thing, whether it's a programming computer or something like that. But even in all of these stories, there's roadblocks that come up, and they find a way to work around it. And they're also lucky enough to have a way to work around it, right? When your high school has a program like this that gets you interested, and then all of a sudden that gets shut down, and then right down the road you work your way into being able to go to a college to get opportunities. That's one, resourceful, but two, also lucky, right? And luck definitely plays a part in this whole scenario. Go ahead, Coach John.
During one of the signing days at Beta Bay, Coach Daniel came over, Daniel Assay over at Stanford, and he was talking about kind of a situation where he wanted to get better. He didn't have an opportunity, and so he said, although I don't advise this, he would break into his high school gym, take out a rebound board, and then hit against the board, and then the ball comes back in practice setting. So it really spoke to me in terms of one of the lines here. It says, what distinguishes the histories of these people is not just their extraordinary talent, but their extraordinary opportunities. And so, like Coach Matt said, we have an opportunity here. If we don't have a net, we literally email Coach Matt and Coach Hardy and say, we're going to come by your house and pick up a net. That's an opportunity that other players, other clubs don't have. I didn't have that when I was a kid. I've heard people who don't have a net, so they'll tie string across two little areas and create, whatever they have. So it speaks a little bit to the having those extraordinary opportunities, but also, like Coach Matt said, having that resourcefulness and trying to figure out how am I going to overcome these things. Think how crazy it was that Bill Gates was saying that after his bedtime, he was in walking distance of University of Washington. So in the middle of the night, he'd walk over so he can program and then get back and try to wake up for school in the morning. And his parents couldn't figure out why they couldn't wake him up. That's not only an extraordinary opportunity, but extraordinary kind of resourcefulness. Goes back to to our book that we read previously, right? Grit. He had a passion for programming, so he figured out how he can get those reps in, how he can get that practice programming.
That's awesome. There was a definition that Malcolm Gladwell put for achievement in this chapter, for chapter 2. But even if you haven't read it, I'd love to hear a couple guys, just your own personal definition of what you think achievement is. Anyone want to hop on that? I'm gonna go to Joshua Thompson over here. Let's hear you, Josh. I'm unmuting you.
Oh, well, for achievement, I think just success, really. That's that's the biggest thing I think of. It's just when you're able, if you set a goal and then you want to achieve something, whether it's playing volleyball, you're in a job, you're in school, it's just getting or working towards it and then being successful. That's what I really think of it.
Okay. Working towards it. I heard goal a couple times, working towards something, and then the success at the end. Okay. It's good. Let's go to Duras. What's your, Aaron. Yeah. I'll go Aaron and then I'll go to Duras.
I was just going to say making yourself proud. At the end of the day, you've done something better than you did before. Impressed yourself on what you're able to do.
Okay. I like that. Being proud of your effort per se. Cool. Duras.
Mine's kind of the same as Josh's. It's if you set, it doesn't even need to be a big goal. It could be something volleyball related. It could be getting the right blocking footwork down, just small things like that. And once you put all your effort towards it, once you finally achieve the goal that you set, I feel that's kind of my thing.
Cool. Anyone else have a good or have an example they want to share? A definition of achievement? Okay. The definition that Gladwell put in this chapter was talent plus preparation. Right? So talent plus preparation equals achievement. I think that's interesting, right? Because it's you need to be take the Canadian hockey for example, right? There's plenty of people who are born in January, February, and March that play hockey that aren't in the NHL, right? You still have to have the talent and the wherewithal to be, a high level athlete, whatever that may be. But you also have to have the preparation, right? You have to be able to, it's not just being 6'8" and jumping 40 inches that gets you to be a great volleyball player. You have to be able to put in the work to be an all around great player, right? And kind of what Josh and Ryan were hitting on, and Aaron as well. There's a lot of ideas that we can pull from our previous book as well into this, of the idea of deliberate practice, right? Of going through the process of what you want, picking out what you want to improve on or what your weakness is, and then attacking it, right? Trying to take a step forward. We actually were just having a discussion. We have a little Stanford small group right before this meeting. We were overviewing The Last Dance, which is the Michael Jordan documentary. And we were having a talk about, what it means to just really truly get after something and to be really present in the moment. And Coach John was just talking about, Daniel Rosai was talking about the difference between going for a run and trying to crush your run, right? Of just trying to annihilate your time from last week, and whatever that may be. I think that's an important idea for you guys to have also. Showing up to practice is good, right? Showing up is 80% of the battle. But the greatest people, the outliers, are the ones that are not just showing up; they're doing the other 20% that's needed. They're pushing themselves and their teammates and those around them to continually improve and take a step forward. So I think that's an important one as well. Yeah. What else, Coach John? Did you have anything from Chapter 2 that you thought was an important one? I know you had to hop off a little bit quick here, so.
Yeah. It kind of goes towards what we were reading in Grit, right? The whole achievement and equation there. But it leads me to a different book that I read. It's by a guy named Austin Kleon. And so he wrote a book called Steal Like an Artist. And it talks about, things have been done before. For example, Kobe Bryant learned some moves from Jordan. He learned some stuff from Magic Johnson. He didn't try to reinvent anything. he took the best things that he saw from other people and kind of incorporated into his game. But what Austin Kleon said was in this book is a lesson for youth. And he said, your sort of dim friends who work really hard will eventually clobber your talented friends who are lazy. So you can have all the talent in the world. And like Coach Matt said, if you don't apply it, your competitors, your friends, your peers that may not have those advantages, but they're continuing to bust their butt, are eventually going to clobber you. So it really lends itself to, Ryan was saying it right there, kind of deliberate practice. He's concentrating and practice on achievement for him equal learning his blocking footwork and crushing that during that practice. That kind of deliberate practice is what's going to make the difference between someone who's engaged and not engaged in kind of what they're trying to do.
Like that. I want to close with just the idea of the 10,000 hours again, and we'll come back. Obviously, it was the title of chapter 2. It's a hugely important concept in this book. How many hours do you guys think you hit in the fall, like of practice? How many hours do you think you had? You could calculate it out, just a guesstimate. And I don't have the calculated number. I probably should have done that, but I have a general guesstimate in my head of kind of where we were at.
Say like around like maybe 60.
60? Okay. Anyone else have a guess?
I think 100.
100.
100? Okay.
Maybe
All right,
70.
we'll do it. Say again, Matt?
Maybe 70.
Maybe 70. Okay. I'm going to do my quick calculator move here. So we go from August all the way through to January. Okay. 10, 11, 12, 1, 4 months. That's about, let's say 4 months. And we usually go every weekend, right? We'll go twice per se with a tournament in there. So let's say 4 sessions at least. 16 times that by 2. Got to add in our skills practice. You guys usually go to 1 skills practice a week, right? So that's another 20-ish hours. Tournaments, how long do you think tournaments would be? How many hours of play do you think you're getting at a tournament?
2 maybe.
2 hours at a tournament? That's it?
No. Wait, really?
5, 6, 7 hours.
Yeah, probably. We'll go with 6. We probably have 8 days of tournament.
Yeah.
48. Yeah, I'd say we're probably in the range of, during the fall, probably in the range of like 80 to 120. We'll go in between there. All right, so each fall season, that's 80 to 120. Now, if you're a setter and you came to more than just setters practice, you went to pin hitters practice too, or you came to middle and libero practice to set also, you're adding in hours that way. But what other ways can you add hours, right? And we've talked a little bit, obviously. But what other ways can you add hours to your total?
You can practice on your own.
Yeah, you can do this stuff. Like we're talking right now. Like you can have a net, find somewhere to go to. Obviously, that's a great way to add in hours. What else? What else can you do to add hours per se to your total of working towards a goal?
Video.
You do beach hours. Oh, sorry. I said you could do like beach, and then also like if other coaches ask if you can join their practices.
There you go, Josh. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Yeah. So if you played beach, how many hours did you add in during the fall? There's 10 sessions. How long are beach practices?
3
hours. So
30 hours, right? There's another 30 hours to your total. If you play in a beach tournament, that's another 6 hours, right? And you just keep on tallying that up in your head. On average, what the top performers were doing, do you remember how many hours they averaged a year on what they were practicing? Anyone remember?
Ooh. I got to cheat.
It was for chess. It was about 1,000.
Yeah, exactly. It took about 10 years to be a master at about 1,000 hours, right? And Bobby Fischer did it in 9, right? So he was doing 1,200 hours a year or whatever it may be. It's a lot of time, right? It takes a lot of time. And I think there's something to be said, and I think I've heard it from a number of different people who at the highest level have talked about when they first start playing, like you just forget that you're practicing, right? It's a game. You're just enjoying this game, right? They make it up in their head, whatever it could be. I know for me, I always use in my own personal example, I had my brother who played, he was on the original Bay Bay team, and we would always play with each other. He's 4 years older than me. And so number one, I was always trying to push to be better than my brother, just out of brotherly love. But we made up a game in our backyard. We didn't have a net. We made up a game called roof ball, where you would literally, it was cooperative, where we would pass and then you had to set to the other person. And then you try and hit it off the roof and get it to fall on the ground. And we built boundaries and whatnot. And we got so ridiculously competitive that multiple times we ended up fist fighting each other because one of us disagreed with the other thing. But we played that game for 4 hours a day to start. And then when my dad saw that like we were in love with it, he installed a floodlight in the backyard so that we could play at night. And so then we played for 7 hours a day. And I swear the greatest improvement I ever made was when we started playing roof ball during the evening time, and we would play beach volleyball in the morning. And it just was, we were just going out and having fun and playing this game. And I think knowing those scenarios and knowing kind of the success that other people have had, and there's so many examples of top performers, in the NBA is, they're going to the park and they're just balling and playing pickup games for the entire day they can. Knowing that and trying to recreate that in your own scenario is something that I would really encourage you to do, right? You can only go out and practice passing for so long, but you can play a game forever, right? If you're having fun with something and you're enjoying and you're competing, that's fun. That's easy to recreate. That's easy to go out and do. It's difficult to be, going through kind of, not mindless practice, but really tedious practice over and over and over again. So I encourage that to you guys to find ways to create a game for yourself. But, if you have someone you can play with, even better. But if you compete against yourself in some way, whether it's stamina of trying to get, making it longer than you did the previous day, or, getting more accurate, or hitting a target, 8 times out of 10 rather than 7 times out of 10, do it. Make it, gamify everything that you can, because it just helps. It helps gear that passion up. It helps keep you going and almost distracts you from what you're really doing, which is getting better. Cool. That's my those are my closing thoughts. Anyone have any closing things that they had from these 2 chapters, or from the discussion that they thought about or would want to add in, or anything like that before we sign off? Yeah, Coach John.
If no one has one, I'll go. I like towards the very end of chapter 2, lucky breaks don't seem like the exception, they seem like the rule. And I really like this quote that they say, the harder I work, the luckier I get. The harder you work, the luckier you get, the more opportunities you're going to have. And it shows here, these guys had extraordinary opportunities. So work hard. That's it.
Love it. Awesome. All right, guys, nice work. I'm going to send out a link with our discussion notes. I'll get that going for you. If you don't have the book and you want to join and read, awesome. Go ahead and order it on Amazon. You can use a free trial of Scribd or Audible to get the audio book version as well, if you want to just read it for free on like a Kindle or ebook. But hopefully you keep joining in. We're going to go 2 chapters at a time. So next week will be chapter 3 and 4. And we will just keep plugging away. This is a good one. So I'm glad you guys are hopping in to join. So nice work. And we will see you. Oh, tomorrow, my final plug is we're going to do a town hall for players. So you guys hop on, ask us any questions about summer club volleyball, what coronavirus means for club, what we're doing. So any questions that you guys have, Ariel and I will be on here tomorrow at 3:15 for as long as Ariel can. Our children nap during this time, so she may have to head out quicker than I do. But you can go on our Instagram story right now as well. If you have any questions, shoot them in there if you want them answered. We'll do our best to get to everyone tomorrow if they have a question. But if you want to make sure there's something covered, throw it in there so we know, and we'll prepare an answer and make sure we're doing our best to keep you all in the loop. So hopefully see you then. All right,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.
Adios.
Okay.